Thank you so much for joining me on the way forward. I'm Eddie Francis. Joining me is a guest I'm very, very pleased to have. I talked about having our institutions of higher learning, how I extended these invitations to everybody. And I was very pleased to get a response from Notre Dame. Not that Notre Dame, but actually Notre Dame Seminary of Graduate Schools, at the Graduate School of Theology, I should say. And if you're in New Orleans, you pass it on Carrollton probably all the time, right off Earhart. And so joining me is the president and the rector, the Very Reverend Joshua Rodrigue. Father Josh, how are you?
Eddie, I'm doing great. Thank you for the invitation. It's always a pleasure to be able to put ourselves out there because we're one of those universities that you really don't hear about in New Orleans, sort of a specialized university.
Yeah. And I think that's a great place to start. So talk about what it is that students who attend Notre Dame Seminary, what do they study?
Well, we have sort of two types of students. Now, both types would study theology or philosophy.
Mm-hmm.
So we have a program. We're mainly focused on forming Catholic priests. That was the primary mission of Notre Dame, founded in 1923. So we just celebrated our centennial not too long ago, and so it was primarily set up to educate men for the Catholic priesthood. And they would start off with their studies in philosophy. Because that's sort of that foundation to be able to help with that higher thinking, the abstract thinking. If you're going to be thinking about God, you have to be able to think sort of abstractly too. And so we start off with philosophy. So students can study either for a bachelor's in philosophy or a master's in philosophy. For our men studying for priesthood, they usually come in with a degree already. And so they would be sort of in a pre-theology program, we would call that, with the philosophies. So they would have a degree. We have guys that come with degrees in marketing, guys that have been lawyers. So it's a whole gamut of education, and they all start off on that same level of philosophy. Then after that 2-year program, they'll end up either with, like I said, a bachelor's in philosophy or master's. Then they move into their theological studies. So that's a 3.5-year program. They can end with a master's in theological studies or a master's of divinity. So it's more of a professional. So you have an academic degree and a professional degree. So the master's of divinity is really what we're focusing on with the guys preparing for priesthood. Now, some their bishops or vocation directors want them to study to get the academic degree to go for further studies. Maybe for either what we call a license in theological studies at one of maybe the pontifical universities in Rome or in the United States, or they go for a doctorate in theology. We also had two types of students. We have those that are studying for priesthood, but we also have lay students. So students in the general population that want to come to either learn more about their faith in a more academic setting. Or we have a lot of those that are maybe teaching in Catholic schools, that they want to get their master's in theology to be able to teach religion classes at the Catholic schools, or sometimes even just personnel in parishes, maybe in charge of religious education. So we also have a master's in pastoral leadership. So we have that program where they can get a master's in pastoral leadership. It's similar to what we have here, but those classes usually are on Saturdays.
Mm-hmm.
Because we have lay people that work during the day, so they come for those courses. They'll come for that. We also have the Institute for Lay Ecclesial Ministries, a certification program where they take not as many rigorous courses, but a formation course that they would take to help them with the education, but also the formation. So that's mainly the education. As I said, we're very sort of narrow in our offerings of education, but primarily the seminary was established to form men for the priesthood. So educationally, but also not just the academics, the intellectual part. When we work with our guys, we're working with them in really sort of 4 dimensions that we focus on. So we focus on the human dimension. So I always tell guys, I'm like, look, main thing, don't be a jerk and don't be weird. There's the human formation right there. Don't be a jerk and don't be weird. nobody wants to go to a weird priest. Nobody wants to work with a jerk. If you're gonna preach about the Lord, at least try and be like him. So, so that's one of the foundational things with the human formation, because
You know,
you're working a lot of times with guys that are coming in. They have that call to priesthood, but their foundations may not be so well established. They may be
yeah.
coming from broken homes. They may be coming from we would call it a Saint Augustine background, where they
Mm.
weren't so holy and all that. And so the Lord
I,
calls all types.
I appreciate that as a graduate of St. Augustine High School. So I hear you.
Oh yes, Saint Augustine. If he can become a saint, there's hope for us all.
Yes.
But that's one of those essential foundations of the
Yeah.
human. How do we relate with one another? If you can't relate to people, then how are you going to be a good priest? How can you give that message of the Lord to others? And like I said, they're coming from a background where the world has entered into their world a lot. And so it's really, they enter in, and it's almost like going into a religious community where you have that novitiate. You have a certain amount of time where you study. Well, they don't take any classes when they first come in. It's a propedeutic stage. It's that very first stage that they enter into, where cell phones, those things that are attached to us. It's helping them to use that in the right manner. Not to be so attached to social media, where it's all consuming, but that there's sort of a period of being able to fast from it. So we
Hmm.
do a technology fast, where we turn their
Hmm.
cell phones into, believe it or not, a cell phone. Where we take away all these various apps that are unnecessary. They keep their personal apps, like the banking app. They keep maps. We want to make sure they can get back to the seminary, and and then we also, they can text, and they can call people. So mainly using it for what it's for. So to really sort of separate them from all the computer technology, so they don't take academic courses for credit during that year. They're mainly focusing on human formation and also that spiritual formation. It's almost like a year-long retreat, you could say, where they're detoxing from their previous life in the world in order to really grow in friendship with the Lord. Really, God bless Pope Francis. That was one of his big things, is not just to know about Jesus, but to come to know Jesus. And so give them that opportunity to really grow in that friendship and discern, is the Lord really calling me to this? Was I hearing this correctly in that discernment? But then we do have some academic courses with them, but it's not for credit, but it's sort of getting everybody on the same playing field. This is what, the basics of the faith that we're looking at, of scripture. And so doing that. And so we have, that human formation, that spiritual formation. We also have the intellectual formation, which is more than just I take classes, but it's growing in a love for learning and a desire to learn. And then the final one is that pastoral component. That's sort of what people think seminary is about. That, we're training them how to celebrate mass, how to celebrate the sacraments, hearing confessions, anointing the sick, being able to go out and minister in the parishes with the different communities. And we have a wide range of pastoral experiences that we have for the guys there. So it's really sort of a holistic education. We might be focused on theology, but really the formation we give to our seminarians is focused on, don't be weird and don't be a jerk, and love the Lord.
I can get with that. So, Father Josh, how would you describe the impact of Notre Dame Seminary on our community or throughout Southeast Louisiana?
Well, that's what I was going to say. Really, there's the particular impact and a universal impact, because on the community itself, we're forming men to be priests in the Archdiocese of New Orleans. So they're going to be at your parishes here in the city and in the towns and cities outside of New Orleans. So they become those that become the voice for those that have no voice. They
Mm.
become those that really help walk with young people in the Catholic elementary schools, high schools. They're the ones that help to form your leaders in the community, whether it be civic leaders, whether it be those that are in the medical professions, those that are in higher learning. there's that spiritual component, that there's really a unique ability to be able to form and guide people so that they live out their lives according to God's plan, that plan for salvation that we've all been given. And so it's being able to really form them to be not just priests, but to be pastors, which means you got to be able to take care of somebody besides yourself. Yeah. You're not just there celebrating mass and that's it, but really someone who's able to walk with families in good times and bad times, to be there when, I think we saw, Archbishop Amen was not only an alumnus from Notre Dame Seminary, but also was rector over here for over 10 years, one of the longer serving rectors here. But we saw with the horrible terrorist attack, that the church provided a place for a community to come together to mourn, to really sort of share that shock, but to find that solace and that peace. And it becomes really sort of a national focus too. And so community-wise, we see our alumni doing that. Again, the lay alumni that take classes here, shaping and molding future leaders, future minds in Catholic education. So particularly in the community, it's a large impact, especially in faith. New Orleans is a heavily Catholic city, or a Catholic tradition, that even if you're not Catholic, you have some understanding. I'm from Thibodeau. We say that our area is a very heavily Catholic area. My one of the cooks at one of my first assignments at the Co-Cathedral, Miss Noby, I'd walked in one day, and there she is. She's praying a rosary. I said, "Miss Noby, I thought you were Baptist." She says, "Oh, I am, Father." I said, "And you pray the rosary?" She said, "Oh, yeah." She says, "My mother taught me that." I said, "Was your mother Catholic?" She says, "Oh, no, she worked at one of the other churches, and the priest taught her how to pray the rosary." "Oh, we love those prayers." And she says, "I usually do that while I'm waiting for the food to cook and all that." But, you see sort of an influence that Catholic influence in our area. But Notre Dame serves not only the particular, but we say the universal. We have men studying here from 22 dioceses. That's across Southeast United States, not just South Louisiana, but Southeastern United States, from Brownsville, Texas, all the way to Raleigh and in between. And we do a sponsorship. We sponsor scholarships for 2 dioceses in Africa. One, the Diocese of Yendi in Ghana. We usually have we should be having this year 2 of their seminarians coming over to spend the 4 years in theology here. And we also sponsor seminarians from the Archdiocese of Tororo in Uganda. So usually each year we get a seminarian from Uganda, and we've been doing this for many, many years. And we provide the scholarship. So their diocese sends them over here. We absorb the cost of that. Or we do have benefactors that do contribute to the education so that they can bring back to their people a different experience and a different theological experience. So we're even helping to shape, we'd say the church, even in mission lands, because the seminarians come over here, part of their program. They go to Costa Rica, to the villages in the mountains, working with the extremely poor people there. That, in fact, they have their own native language, their native dialect that they're speaking. So Spanish they don't oftentimes know everything in Spanish. So there is that worldwide outreach that we're preparing our men for, not just to serve the church, here in New Orleans, but in their own dioceses in the United States. And sometimes they get called up to go and teach elsewhere too. So they may be teaching in Rome, at the seminary out over there. And so there is if we think about it, the alumni here have a great influence on the Catholic faith in really the southeastern United States. I try not to think about that, because I'm thinking that's a lot of pressure on me and on the priests that work here, and the formators, the faculty, that we're actually influencing how people believe.
Yeah.
And that belief in God, it's like, when I gotta go before the Lord, I'm gonna be sweating a little bit. I'm hoping I'm gonna have some people coming to my defense saying, "I tried," but just that awesome aspect. if we can form a man to truly have the heart of Christ, Christ the Good Shepherd, then we've done our job. We say,
Mhm.
Lord, I've done my work. Now, you got to work on them.
You're listening to The Way Forward. I'm Eddie Francis, and we're talking to Father Joshua Rodrigue. He is the president and rector of Notre Dame Seminary Graduate School of Theology, also known as Notre Dame Seminary. And we are doing the Advancing Southeast Louisiana series, where we're talking to folks from our colleges and universities. And Father Josh, my wife and I had the most interesting conversation one day. She's Baptist. I grew up Catholic here in New Orleans. She grew up Baptist in North Carolina, Winston-Salem. But she went to a Catholic elementary school. And one day we often trade jokes about what happens in Baptist services and Catholic masses. And so um but one day she said, "What is it about Catholic education?" And I went to St. Peter Claver, St. Aug, Loyola. And so I said, it hits me every time I'm in a room and there's a decision that needs to be made, and I just instinctively reach into my bag of ethics and morals, and I start thinking about, well, what is the right thing to do, and if it's not the right thing to do, then what is the sensible thing to do, and what is the thing that we need to do that's going to really make sure that we are all fulfilled and we all feel whole about the decisions. And so I told her that when you reach into that bag, at least for me, having received a Catholic education and having been raised Catholic, to me, that's when it seems to really kind of step in. That's when it seems to hit a lot of times, especially when a group of people needs a reasonable, rational, ethical, and moral voice in the room a
Right,
lot of
right.
times.
And really, it's the lens that we look through. I think we can think that education is something that I need to acquire from me. But
Yeah.
I think in the Catholic Church has been part of education for centuries. And I think we see that really as the key to unlocking a person's future. That if they receive a good education, and not just the technical skills, but that formation, then it opens them up to a whole world that would have been closed off. And I think when we see that lens, it's not just about what's good for me, but I think with that Catholic education is focused on the other. The golden rule: do unto others as you have them do unto you. That when we're making decisions, sometimes we can say, this isn't necessarily what I want, but this is for the common good. I think we lose that sometimes. I think we lose that, especially in society today. All you have to
Mhm,
do is look at politics. And it's
mhm.
so divisive where the church is saying, no, no, no. We need to be united, and we need to have the focus on the common good. If we have that, then all of our decisions will be good decisions because we're looking not just for myself or this particular group, but for everyone and how it works out. And that's where that education, that formation, again, the effects of it, I think that you've experienced and your wife has experienced, that there's something more to when we make decisions, and it has consequences. And it's not just how is it going to affect me, but how is it going to affect my brothers and sisters out there? And that's how we have to see things, as brothers and sisters out there, not just this person, this group, or that group, but really, how do we grow together to build a better society and a better world, really?
So with that being said, what does the everyday person need to understand about the work of people who get an education at a place like a Notre Dame? What do they need to understand about their work beyond the mass, or beyond some special event that's happening with the church? What do they need to understand, for instance, about the work that they might do in the community? What are some other things that you would like for folks to understand about
Yeah,
that
that
work?
it's really when you're a priest, you sort of have to be a jack of all trades, and really you're going from one thing to another. Our main thing is really the work that we do is through the lens, we would say, especially for our alumni that are priests, a spiritual fatherhood. That's the lens that we look at our parishes, our communities, that these are our spiritual children. And the decisions we make are for their good, but also we have them coming to us. They want us to be there at different events to represent something more than ourselves. That, oh, here's a man of God that's coming, and it's sort of saying that these are highly equipped men. That it's not just they have book knowledge and education, but having to have knowledge really of the human heart. They take pastoral counseling classes to know that, yeah, when you have people going through grief or loss or trying to make decisions in life, who do they call on? They want to call on somebody that they can trust. And it's taken us many years now, unfortunately, to have to build up trust again, as priests, unfortunately. And it's to say that the formation, and really, again, we think of the educating the mind, but really we see it as formation here. Formation at the seminary has changed over the past 20 years, that there is a holistic part, and there is a focus saying this isn't just a job you're going into, but this is a life and a lifestyle. And it's to ensure that the man knows that, look, you're going to live a chaste celibate life. That and the people deserve the very best, and they're very demanding too. But the funny thing is, they think you know everything. When I go make hospital rounds, and going in South Louisiana, it is great because you have to try and figure out what the medical issue is with them when they tell you. When I went into a room and one of them says, "Father, I should be dead because when I was a kid, I had spiny miney Jesus," and you're like, okay, what is it? You realize it's spinal meningitis.
Oh, okay.
So they got that. They got terrible palsy. They have all these things. It's
I was waiting for the punchline. Okay.
They go in for Cadillac surgery, and they got pacemakers put in. So, we have to be translators with all these things, especially with Cajuns. Is trying to figure out now what exactly you're trying to say. One lady, I said, I thought you were in last month. She said, oh, it's different this time, Father. This time I have fireballs of the Eucharist. Okay. I'm thinking, I don't remember anything in theology about the fireballs of the Eucharist. I don't know what she had seen some vision or what is going on. And then I realized fibroids of the uterus.
Yeah, fibroids of the uterus. Yeah.
And then they tell you that, and they expect you to know it.
Mm-hmm,
sometimes we do that. I remember I had a parishioner of mine coming up for communion. And afterwards I said, when was the last time you went to see your heart doctor? He said, I don't know, it's been about a month or two. I said, you need to go see your heart doctor. And he went, and he came back and he says, Father, how did you know that I needed to go? I said, because I saw your fingertips. I said, they were purple. I said, your circulation wasn't good. So you sort of have to, you learn these different things, just so you learn about human nature, and you learn about people, and it's sort of an outside learning that you get, but it's walking with people in all stages of life. You're there, for the celebrations of birth, because like I said, you're that spiritual father to them. They want you to be there at these events. They want your father, it's after that, come over for the celebration afterwards. So it's not just Mass, but it is all those sacraments, but especially at the beginning of life and especially at the end of life. They want that comfort knowing that what I've done all my life is what I've been asked to do, and that I've done the Lord's will. Give me that reassurance that, strengthen my faith if it's sort of shaky at the end. Or, Lord, rejoice with me because I'm going from this life to the next. Mm-hmm. And it's a very moving life. It's not a job, but it's a life that, that we prepare our men for, that you're going to be there and you need to be there as that father. Don't be an absent father. You have to be there for all those stages, all those ways. And like I said, they expect you to be a finance whiz because you got to deal with the books and the finances in the parish. They expect you to be, a plumber because guess what? Your guy's not going to be there on the weekend when that toilet doesn't want to stop running, and you got to figure out how is this going to work. Or you got to plunge a toilet. I always say, don't be afraid to do any kind of work, because don't ask your people to do something you wouldn't want to do yourself.
Wow.
And so it's like I said, it's more than just education. It's a formation for that way of life, and to be able to just accompany and walk with people throughout their lives. We're very much a people-oriented ministry and job, if you want to look at it that way, because it's not about the if you don't like people, don't become a priest. You're not going to go lock yourself away somewhere. You got to love people, and you got to love souls, and you got to know that people are broken, and you're just as broken, which is why you're very good at it because you know where they're coming from.
Wow, wow. So with that being said, I want to end by asking a couple of questions in one. And the first part of the question is, what are some fun things that someone needs to know about Notre Dame? But then the other, well, besides having to deal with the toilet, but
We are a 100-year-old building, so there's a lot of things that start to fall apart.
yeah. But then also, if people from the community wanted to get more involved with Notre Dame, how can they do that?
Sure, sure. We do fun things. I mean, when it snowed this past year, I mean, it was like we were all kids outside. We had snowball fights. We tied up a kayak behind a truck and pulled that around there. I got in the back of there. We were having snowball fights. They're throwing snowballs at me. It was, it was just a wonderful day with them. We do have fun. We do work in conjunction oftentimes with St. Joseph's Seminary College over in Covington at the Abbey. They're sort of, you could say, our feeder school. A number of the guys will get their bachelor's from there and then start their graduate studies here, the postgraduate studies. And so we have a nice friendly rivalry. It'd be like, a Southern Grambling type thing every year. We have, Southern Grambling have the Battle of the Bands. They have the football game, but really the Battle of the Bands. For us, we have our bonfire game, which is actually, I think, moving towards 100 years that they've been doing this together, where we go up over there and we play a flag football game against I would say it's like a nursing home playing against a high school, but still, we lost this past year. The year before we did win. The year before that we really lost. But we do that. We have really, that's sort of how we establish those fraternal bonds through sports. We get together. They host us up over there. We have the competition. We have a volleyball game over there too. We share a meal, and then we have the bonfire, the big bonfire that they spent time building. And it's just a good time of fraternity. In the springtime, we have the Causeway Cup. We usually play a soccer match against them. We won this year. We won last year. I think we won the year before. We're pretty good at that. We're doing well with that. So we've used Ramos Field. They've been gracious to us, let us use that for that competition. Play basketball. Our guys, we have a basketball team. In fact, our mascot for Notre Dame is, guess what? But the Hunchbacks. We're the Hunchbacks of Notre Dame over here. And and every February, March, we travel up to Milwaukee to play in the St. Francis de Sales basketball tournament, where this year I think we had 14 or 16 basketball teams from seminaries across the United States.
Okay.
And so we didn't do as well as what we wanted to this past year,
Okay.
unfortunately. Previous year, our first year playing in it, we had 12 teams and came in 12th. It was a very embarrassing game.
Okay.
I might be rector, but I'm also president, and it's like president of the university. Like, I want a winning team.
Yeah, yeah.
So then the next year we came in fourth. We did, and we thought we had high hopes this year, but I think our guys sort of puttered out, and I think we came about fifth or sixth this year in the tournament. But we do fun. We have sports over here. The guys, we get together. In fact, we celebrated our 100th anniversary, and WLAE did a wonderful documentary on us called Formed, and that's on our website. And people can go there really to find out more information about the seminary. But it's an hour-long documentary. It gives you sort of the history, but also the formation, what goes on behind the doors. Like I said, people pass and they see the building, but they wonder, what goes on over there? The best compliment we've gotten, we have a lot of schools that will come through for tours. We just renovated our chapel, a beautiful chapel, and so people have come in to see that. But the best compliment I think we've gotten was from the junior class from E.D. White Catholic High that came in. We had the boys and the girls came. The girls came and they met, and they said, the guys are normal. They sounded surprised, like, what did they? Yeah. But it's normal guys. It's normal guys here, young men that are striving, and some not so young. We have some older guys too. But we do have that fun that's here. We get together, we watch movies. We play cards. We have this weekend. It's warming up outside, so we have water wars. We have all these different events by the swimming pool that they'll have relay races with that. They become big kids all of a sudden. Sometimes with that, you have water balloon fights. It's going to be, think of it like a college with really with Jesus at the heart of it.
Yeah.
So, the Lord made us good, and everything is good. And we just try to really rejoice in the vocation, the life that the Lord called us to. So, we try and balance out the work and play, with that.
That's outstanding. And if people want to get involved, I know the website is nds.edu. But if
Correct.
people from the community wanted to find out more, you just heard that you do tours. How
Yeah.
else can people get involved?
Yeah. If they can call us and contact us if they want to come over, more than happy to give them tours. We also have various events, especially, while we are a college, we charge tuition, we charge room and board. That never makes up for everything that we need in our budget. So we do have fundraisers, and very often that's when the community gets involved with being a part of our community. In December, we usually have our priest luncheon over at the Roosevelt Hotel, a fundraiser for us. We had 900 people this year that attended. It was our largest gathering of them. And it gives them an opportunity to sit and talk with the seminarians and really support what the mission that we have. And we really see that people buy into the mission because they see the effects of it, because really it affects them, especially our Catholic community. They become a part of it. In the springtime, we have our gala, and it's usually in March. And we have tickets available for that. They can purchase those and they come over. And it's sort of an open house over here at the seminary. It takes place in the seminary itself, so they can see, they come see the chapel. They come see a lot of what goes on behind the doors over here. And we've even started to reach out more to a younger crowd. We had this past year was our first time we had sips with seminarians.
Okay.
So it was they had guys always love competition. So we had groups that got together and made different cocktails, and of course we gave a little bit, the taste. You don't want to give full cocktails to everybody,
Right.
although it is a very Catholic celebration that way. It wouldn't be Catholic if we didn't have, as we say, our dear Lord changed water into wine, not wine into water. So, but that was an opportunity really for some of the younger adults, usually we get the older people that are involved with us, with supporting us, but just it was more of a friend raiser is really what it was, and just having people come over and say, yeah, these guys like to have fun too. It's entertaining and all that. So that those are some of the ways that they can really get involved with us, and sometimes we'll have things open to the community that we'll advertise out there, usually through the Archdiocesan Communications Office. But yeah, we try to be hospitable over here. And so we do have some people that will show up and say, we just want to come over and see the chapel. It's like, oh, come on, and we'll give you a little tour and all that. But yeah, it's most of the people will see the effects of the education and formation. But yeah, we do. We're always grateful for the support that people give and the interest that people show just to come see what we have here. I mean, the fountain in front of the seminary is a gathering place oftentimes for the community, where it was the fountain that was outside of the Vatican Pavilion for the World's Fair.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and there's a replica of it at the other Notre Dame.
Yeah.
University of Notre Dame. They have a replica of it over there, but it's a famous piece of sculpture that came on over here right after that. And so it provides a central spot where people from the community will come and just walking their dogs. They have a little sit down right there and just sort of take a rest and have some prayer time there.
Oh, man. The Very Reverend Joshua Rodrigue, who is the president and rector of Notre Dame Seminary Graduate School of Theology. Father Josh, thank you so much for joining me on The Way Forward.
Oh, Eddie, thank you so much. I was very grateful for the invitation, and it's always good to be able to share our messages, really sort of pull back the curtain on the mystery of those mysterious priests. It's like we're not just hatched there, we're formed. It's normal guys that we have a sort of an ordinary guys for an extraordinary calling, really, you could say.